This story is titled, My Wife Was Shocked When I Invited Her Lover's Wife to a Backyard Party. My revenge was brutal. Everyone was shocked. Hi, everyone. Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and makes sure you never miss out on amazing videos. All right, let's get started. What's up, everyone? So, I thought I had my life all figured out. You know, married for 5 years to Harper, the love of my life, or so I thought. We were the couple everyone admired. Every holiday card was a Pinterest-worthy masterpiece. We'd argue over who got the bigger slice of pie at Thanksgiving and laugh about it later. Pretty normal stuff, but apparently I missed the memo about how happily ever after isn't in the cards when your wife is sneaking around with some dude named Travis. Let me paint the picture. It's a Saturday morning, a perfect fall day, the kind where the leaves crunch just right under your boots and the air smells like fresh-cut grass. I'd just finished mowing the lawn and came inside, feeling accomplished. Harper's on the couch, laughing at her phone like she just found the funniest meme ever. At first, I didn't think much of it. Harper's always been chatty and glued to her phone, but then I noticed something different. She's not sharing the meme with me. Normally, she'd shove the phone in my face like, "Babe, you gotta see this." Not this time. Instead, I get the silent treatment while she's giggling like a teenager. Whatever, I brush it off. Relationships are all about trust, right? But then, little things start adding up, like how her phone is suddenly glued to her side. She's taking it to the bathroom like it's a lifeline. Then there are these mysterious late nights at work. Lots of them. I didn't even question it at first because, hey, Harper's in marketing, and sometimes campaigns need extra hours. But now I'm wondering, were those big projects actually PowerPoint presentations, or were they just code for that dude? Sure, here's the longer version. And it wasn't just the phone. There was this shift in Harper. At first it was subtle, almost like the kind of change you wouldn't notice unless you were paying close attention. But I was paying attention. She'd laugh at my jokes, but it felt hollow, like she was going through the motions. You know when someone smiles, but it doesn't quite reach their eyes? That was her. The warmth, the spark. It was fading. I chalked it up to stress or work or anything but what it really was. Like an idiot, I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe I was imagining things. But those little changes started adding up. Harper, who used to toss her phone on the couch or leave it charging anywhere, now had it glued to her hand. She'd always been pretty open about everything. Texts, emails, even her weird Pinterest boards. But now it was like Fort Knox. The phone was either in her pocket, face down, or locked away. She started being vague about her schedule too. Meetings ran longer, late-night work sessions became more frequent, and her stories didn't always add up. I'd ask her about her day, and the answers were clipped, rushed, like she just wanted me to stop asking. And then came the day, the one where everything changed. It was a Saturday afternoon. Harper had gone upstairs to shower, and her phone was charging on the kitchen counter. I don't know why, but seeing it sitting there felt weird, like it didn't belong. I stood there, staring at it. Should I? Shouldn't I? I mean, snooping isn't exactly the hallmark of a healthy relationship, but when the person you trust starts acting shady, that trust starts to crack. And once it cracks, all you want is to patch it up, or at least figure out where it's leaking. So, yeah, I grabbed the phone. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. I told myself I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just needed peace of mind, right? Just a quick check to prove to myself I was being paranoid. A small peek, no harm done. Big mistake. The first thing I see is a text thread with someone named Travis. Travis? I didn't know a Travis. I clicked on it, and there they were. Messages I never should have seen. They weren't just casual. They were flirty, playful, intimate, inside jokes I didn't get, references to things I knew nothing about. And then I read, "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." Last night? Amazing? My head was spinning. I scrolled up and it got worse. Photos. Selfies of the two of them in what was very obviously a hotel room. Her head on his shoulder. His arm around her waist. Both of them grinning like they are married. Like I didn't exist. I felt absolutely disgusted. Harper wasn't just working late. She wasn't tired or stressed or distant because of life. She was distant because she was busy. Busy sneaking around behind my back with Travis. I froze. My hands were still gripping the phone, but I couldn't move. My brain just stopped. You know how people say time slows down in moments like this? It's true. Those 10 seconds felt like 10 minutes. My entire world shifted and everything started making sense in the worst possible way. And then I heard the water upstairs shutting off. I slammed the phone back down on the counter, trying to make it look untouched. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she might hear it from the bathroom. I couldn't let her see me like this. I couldn't let her know I knew. So I did the only thing I could think of. I walked back to the living room and sat down in my chair, trying to look as casual as possible, like nothing had happened, like my entire world hadn't just imploded. I grabbed the remote and stared at the TV, not even registering what was on. She walked into the room and gave me a quick smile before heading towards the kitchen. And I just sat there, pretending everything was fine. But inside, I was unraveling. I didn't confront her that day. No way. I wasn't about to storm and demanding answers. That's not my style. Plus, I already knew how that conversation would go. She'd deny it. She'd gaslight me. She'd twist it until I was the one apologizing. I needed more than just a gut feeling. I needed to play this smart. That night, I barely slept. Harper was next to me. I kept replaying the last few months. Every late night, every awkward excuse, every weird moment where she seemed distracted. It all made sense now. I wasn't even angry yet. That part came later. At that moment, I just felt stupid. Like, how did I miss this? How long had she been pulling this off? And who the hell was Travis, really? The next morning, I woke up early, determined to figure this out. While Harper was still asleep, I got out my laptop and went full FBI mode. It didn't take long to find him. A quick scroll through Harper's Instagram and some tagged photos from her work events confirmed it. Travis was one of her co-workers, of course. But Travis wasn't just some random dude. He was married to a woman named Sierra, and they had 2 kids. That little detail added a whole new level of betrayal. It wasn't just my life Harper was blowing up. It was Sierra's too. And those poor kids? They didn't deserve this. I sat there staring at Travis's grinning family photos on Facebook, wondering how many lies he'd told to keep up this double life. Did Sierra have any idea? Was she sitting at home, baking cookies for PTA meetings, while her husband was out here playing house with my wife? I thought about reaching out to Sierra right then and there, but something told me to hold off. If I was going to blow this thing wide open, I needed to do it right. I wasn't about to let Harper or Travis weasel their way out of this. That day, I decided I wasn't just going to sit back and let this betrayal crush me. I wasn't going to play the heartbroken victim while Harper and Travis got away with their little affair. No, I was going to make them regret it. I just needed a plan. And trust me, I wasn't going to wing it. This wasn't the kind of thing you go into half prepared, especially when you're up against 2 people who've been scheming behind your back for months. Harper and Travis had the upper hand for a while, but that was about to change. I was done being the clueless husband after the shook settled. I needed to take action, a big one, but I realized that I couldn't do this alone, not entirely at least. Sierra, Travis's wife, was a crucial piece of this puzzle. If I wanted to confront Harper and Travis without giving them the chance to lie their way out, Sierra needed to be in the loop. But how do you casually reach out to someone and tell them their spouse has been cheating? I couldn't exactly send her a text saying, "Hey, I think your husband is sleeping with my wife. Thoughts?" So, I kid you not, I got creative. I figured a neutral setting would be best. Something non-threatening, something neighborly. That's when the idea of a backyard barbecue popped into my head. We'd hosted plenty of them before, and Harper loved them. She'd help me plan, invite her coworkers, including Travis, and have no idea that she was walking right into her own downfall. Sounded perfect. I didn't waste time. The very next morning, I sent Sierra a Facebook message. It was polite, maybe even a little too friendly. I introduced myself as Harper's husband and mentioned that we were throwing a casual barbecue for some neighbors and work friends. I made sure to name drop a few of Harper's co-workers so it didn't seem weird. Then I added, "We'd love for you and Travis to join us. It'll be great to get to know some new faces." To my surprise, Sierra replied within an hour. She thanked me for the invite, said she'd check with Travis, and even mentioned how nice it was to meet someone making an effort to build community. Ouch. The irony of her words hit me like a truck. Meanwhile, Harper was completely clueless. She was thrilled about the barbecue idea, offering to help with decorations and food. She even suggested inviting some of her favorite coworkers, Travis included. That moment was pure gold. The person who was actively wrecking our marriage was suggesting I include her partner in crime at a social gathering in our own backyard. You can't make this stuff up. For the next few days, I played the role of the perfect husband. I let Harper think everything was fine while I meticulously planned every detail. The guest list was small but strategic. Neighbors, a few friends, and key people from Harper's workplace. I made sure to exclude anyone who might tip her off about what was coming. The hardest part was keeping my cool. Every time Harper talked about the barbecue, I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from saying something snarky, like when she said, "Travis and Sierra are such a cute couple. I'm glad they're coming." Cute couple? Give me a break. But I stayed calm because I knew the payoff would be worth it. By the end of the week, everything was in place. I'd prepped the yard, borrowed a massive grill from a neighbor, and made sure the seating arrangements would force Harper and Travis to interact with Sierra and me. Timing was everything. If this was going to work, I needed to make sure everyone was comfortable and relaxed before I dropped the bomb. The day before the barbecue, Sierra messaged me again to confirm they'd be coming. She even asked if there was anything she could bring, which almost made me feel bad for her. She was so nice, so unsuspecting. I hated that she was going to find out about Travis's betrayal in such a public way, but I couldn't think of a better option. I needed her there, and I needed her to see the truth with her own eyes. That night, Harper and I sat on the couch planning the menu. She suggested burgers, hot dogs, and a couple of side dishes. It was like any other night, except for the fact that I was silently seething every time she smiled. How could she sit there, acting like everything was normal when she was sneaking around behind my back? The next morning, I woke up early, double-checking everything. The yard looked great. String lights overhead, tables set up with simple centerpieces, and a cooler full of drinks. It was the perfect suburban setup. Harper even commented on how nice and cozy everything looked, if only she knew what was coming. As the guests started arriving, I shifted into host mode. I greeted everyone with a smile and made small talk about the weather and football. Harper floated around the yard, laughing and chatting like the life of the party, but I could see the cracks. Every time I mentioned Travis's name, her smile faltered just a little, and then they showed up. Sierra and Travis walked in together, holding hands and looking every bit the happy couple. I caught Harper stealing a glance at Travis as he walked in from across the yard. Her eyes lingered just a moment too long before darting away. I swear she looked like she was trying to telepathically send him a message. Stay cool. Stay cool, my ass. Sierra was warm and friendly, immediately complimenting the setup and mingling with the neighbors. Travis, on the other hand, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. His eyes darted around nervously, intentionally avoiding Harper altogether. I welcomed them both with a grin, shaking Travis's hand firmly and giving Sierra a warm nod. Harper was mid-conversation with one of our neighbors when she spotted them. Her face froze for the briefest moment before she plastered on her best fake smile and waved. Travis! Sierra! So glad you could make it, she said, her voice just a little too high-pitched. Watching her squirm was almost satisfying. As the afternoon wore on, I made sure to steer conversations in a way that would put Harper and Travis on edge. I chatted with Sierra, asking her about her kids and how she and Travis managed to balance work and family life. She seemed genuinely happy to talk, completely unaware of the storm brewing around her. Meanwhile, Harper kept glancing at me, probably wondering what I was up to. I could tell she wanted to pull me aside and ask why I'd invited Travis and Sierra, but she didn't dare make a scene. Until now, everything was falling into place. The stage was set. The only thing left was to deliver the final blow. But timing was everything. I wasn't about to rush it and miss the perfect moment. This wasn't just about exposing the affair. It was about making them feel the weight of their betrayal in front of the very people who thought they were the epitome of decent, trustworthy individuals. At one point, Harper cornered me near the grill. Everything okay? She asked, her tone overly casual. Why wouldn't it be? I replied with a shrug, flipping a burger. I don't know, she said, her smile forced. You just seem different. I looked at her, letting the silence hang for a beat too long. Just focused on making this barbecue perfect, I said with a smirk. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't push it. Good. Let her stew. Dinner was served, and I strategically placed Sierra and Travis at a table near the center of the yard. Harper ended up at the same table naturally, which meant I got to watch the three of them navigate one of the most awkward dinners of their lives. Sierra, ever the optimist, tried to keep the conversation light, asking Harper about work. Oh, it's been so busy lately, Harper said, her voice strained. Big projects, you know how it is. I nearly choked on my burger. Big projects? That's what she was calling it? I kept my expression neutral, though. No need to give myself away just yet. Travis barely said a word, and every time Sierra tried to pull him into the conversation, he muttered something vague and took another bite of food. Harper looked like she was clinging to the edge of a cliff, smiling and nodding like her life depended on it. The neighbors, oblivious to the brewing storm, chatted happily about weekend plans and the latest neighborhood gossip. It was almost surreal, sitting there, knowing what I knew, while everyone else carried on like nothing was wrong. After dinner, I decided it was time to start planting seeds. I walked over to the dessert table, where Sierra was helping herself to a slice of pie. So, Sierra, I said, keeping my tone friendly, Travis must be busy at work, huh? Harper's always mentioning how late he's been staying to finish those projects. Sierra looked up, her smile faltering slightly. Yeah, he's been working a lot, she said, glancing over at Travis. Sometimes I barely see him during the week. Must be tough, I said, nodding sympathetically. Harper's been putting in a lot of late nights too. They make quite the team, don't they? She smiled politely, but I could see the faintest flicker of doubt in her eyes. Across the yard, Harper was watching us. Her body was stiff, her hand gripping her drink like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I gave her a small wave, and she quickly looked away. As the evening wore on, the tension became almost unbearable. Harper and Travis were clearly on edge, and even Sierra seemed to pick up on something being off. She kept glancing at Travis, her brows furrowing slightly, like she was piecing together a puzzle that didn't quite make sense yet. Finally, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the string lights began to twinkle, I decided it was time. I stood up, clinking my glass to get everyone's attention. The chatter died down as the guests turned to look at me. "Hey everyone," I began, my voice calm and steady. "I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for coming tonight. It's not often we get to bring everyone together like this, and I think it's important to celebrate community and friendship." I paused, letting my gaze sweep over the crowd before landing on Harper. And of course, a big thank you to Harper for helping me put this together. She's been working so hard lately, both at home and at work. It's really inspiring. Harper's face turned a shade paler, and her smile wavered. "And speaking of work," I continued, turning to Travis and Sierra, "it's been great getting to know more of Harper's coworkers. Travis, I've heard so much about you. Harper's always talking about how dedicated and hardworking you are." Travis shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting to Harper, then back to me. "But you know," I said, my tone sharpening slightly, "it's not just about work, it's about trust." I stressed on the word trust and continued, "About being honest with the people who matter most." The silence was deafening. I locked eyes with Harper, my voice cutting through the chatter like a blade. "Harper," I said, slow and deliberate, "would you like to go ahead and tell everyone here about your secret late-night meetings with Travis? Or should I lay it all out for you?" The gasps from the crowd were almost satisfying. Harper's chair scraped against the concrete as she stood up, her face flushed with panic. "What are you talking about?" she stammered. "This isn't the time or place for whatever this is." Sierra turned to Travis, her confusion morphing into alarm. "Travis, what's he talking about?" Travis opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked like he wanted to vanish into thin air. I smiled, the calmest I'd felt in weeks. "I'm talking about the affair, the texts, the hotel meetups, everything." Sierra's face crumpled as the realization hit her. "Travis?" she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. The yard erupted into murmurs and gasps. Harper and Travis looked like deer caught in headlights, and Sierra's devastation was written all over her face. I stepped back, letting the chaos unfold. My job was done, or so I thought. But as the yard descended into chaos, it became clear that the fallout was far from over. Harper stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Travis looked like someone had just told him his car was on fire. And Sierra, poor Sierra, was staring at her husband with a mix of heartbreak and fury that could melt steel. The murmurs among the guests grew louder. Neighbors exchanged wide-eyed glances, some whispering, others openly gawking. Nobody was leaving, though. Oh no, they weren't going to miss the live drama. Harper finally found her voice. "James, can we please talk about this privately?" she begged, her tone wavering between desperation and anger. "This isn't the right place." I let out a bitter laugh. "Not the right place? That's rich coming from you. Was the hotel room the right place, Harper? Or was that just convenient?" More gasps from the crowd. One of the neighbors muttered, "Oh, damn," under his breath. Harper's face turned red, either from embarrassment or fury. I couldn't tell, and honestly, I didn't care. Sierra, meanwhile, rounded on Travis. "Is it true?" she demanded. "You're sleeping with her? After everything? After all we've been through?" Travis looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. "Sierra, It's not what you think," he stammered, his hands raised defensively. "Oh, don't you dare!" Sierra yelled, cutting him off. "Don't you dare try to gaslight me right now. I'm not stupid, Travis. He has proof. Do you hear me?" "Proof?" I nodded, pulling my phone from my pocket. "Would anyone like to see the texts? Or the pictures?" I offered, holding it up. "Because trust me, I've got plenty." That shut everyone up. Harper's eyes darted to my phone, then to the crowd. "James, please," she said, her voice trembling. "Don't do this. We can fix this. I can fix this." I scoffed, my voice cold and sharp. "You didn't just break our marriage. You destroyed it. You crossed every line and left nothing behind to salvage." The crowd's attention shifted back to Sierra and Travis as Sierra's anger boiled over. "You're disgusting," she spat at him, her voice shaking. "I trusted you. I built a life with you. You have kids? And this is what you do? And with whom? With her. She gestured toward Harper disgustingly like she's a piece of trash, who flinched like she'd been slapped. Travis reached for Sierra's arm, but she yanked it away. Don't touch me, she hissed. Don't you dare touch me! Harper, desperate to shift the blame, turned to me. James, you don't understand, she said, tears streaming down her face. I was lonely. You've been so distant lately. I made a mistake, okay? A horrible mistake. But you have to take some responsibility for this. Responsibility? I shot back, incredulous. You think this is my fault? That's a hell of a stretch, Harper, even for you. You stopped caring, she continued, her voice rising. You barely looked at me anymore. What was I supposed to do? Not cheat, for starters, I snapped. That would have been nice. The neighbors, who had been murmuring quietly, now seemed to divide into two camps. Those who were horrified by the spectacle and those who were clearly loving every second of it. One woman whispered something to her husband, who nodded grimly. Another couple exchanged awkward glances before quietly slipping out the gate. But most of them stayed, too curious or too entertained, to leave. Sierra turned her attention back to me, shaking. How long? She asked. How long has this been going on? About 6 months, I said flatly, holding her gaze. Maybe longer. I found the texts a few weeks ago. Dates, times. They match up with all those late nights Harper's been working. Sierra's face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought she might collapse. 6 months, she whispered, as if saying it out loud made it more real. Then her expression hardened. She turned to Travis and said, We're done. Do you hear me? Done. Travis didn't even try to argue. He just stood there, his shoulders slumped in defeat as Sierra stormed toward the gate. Wait! Harper called after her. But Sierra didn't even turn around. She pushed the gate open, slamming it shut behind her with a force that made everyone wince. The sound echoed through the yard like a gunshot. Travis hesitated, looking from Harper to the gate. I should go after her, he mumbled. But he didn't move. Yeah, you should, I said, laughing. But don't expect her to take you back. If she's smart, she won't. Travis glared at me for a moment before turning and walking out of the yard. The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes were on Harper now, who looked small and defeated, standing alone in the middle of the chaos she'd created. The neighbors began to disperse, one by one. A few offered me awkward pats on the back or mumbled words of sympathy as they left. No one said a word to Harper. By the time the yard was empty, it was just the two of us. Harper stood by the table, her arms wrapped around herself. James, she whispered, please, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. But it did, I said, my tone flat. And now you have to live with it. She stepped closer, tears streaming down her face. I'll do anything, she said, her voice breaking. Therapy, counseling, whatever you want. Just don't give up on us, please. I stared at her for a long moment, my emotions swirling like a storm. Anger, betrayal, sadness. All of it threatened to overwhelm me, but there was no going back. Harper shattered all the trust I had for her. She was my wife, and I was committed to her only for her to go with a jerk like Travis. I couldn't forgive her for it. There's nothing left to save, I said quietly. You destroyed it. Her sobs grew louder, but I didn't waver. I turned and walked inside, leaving her standing there in the dark. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of clarity. It wasn't closure, not yet, but it was a start. The fallout, though, was anything but clean. If you've ever seen a perfectly controlled demolition where a building collapses neatly into its own footprint, this was the opposite. It was messy, unpredictable, and left wreckage everywhere. Harper might have been the epicenter, but the shockwaves reached everyone around us. That night, after I left her in the backyard, Harper stayed out there for hours. I could hear her pacing back and forth on the deck, her muffled sobs cutting through the otherwise quiet night. I didn't care. I locked myself in the guest room, trying to piece together how we'd gotten here. It wasn't like I was blindsided anymore, but seeing it all play out so publicly made it hit differently. The next morning, Harper was gone by the time I woke up. She left a note on the kitchen counter that said, "We need to talk. Call me when you're ready." I crumpled it up and tossed it in the trash. But the day didn't end there. Word spread fast, faster than I expected. Of course, when you publicly expose an affair at a barbecue, it doesn't stay a secret for long. By lunchtime, half the neighborhood knew, and by the evening, the other half did too. I started getting texts and calls from friends, family, and even some of Harper's co-workers who had been at the barbecue. Most of them had the same tone: shock, disbelief, and a sprinkling of awkward condolences. "Hey man, just heard what happened. That's rough. You okay?" I never would have thought Harper would do something like that. "You need anything? You're handling this better than I would. Stay strong." The most satisfying part is a message from one of Harper's co-workers who hadn't been at the barbecue. "Travis is screwed. HR got wind of what happened. Pretty sure he's about to get canned. Good. As for Harper, she didn't come back that day. Or the next. She must have gone to a friend's place or a hotel, because I didn't hear a peep from her except for one text asking if she could come by to grab some things. I ignored it. Instead, I focused on cleaning up the mess, literally and figuratively. The yard still had remnants of the barbecue. I cleaned it all up, one piece at a time, like I was scrubbing Harper's betrayal out of my life. By the end of the week, the lawyers were involved. Harper and I didn't even argue about the divorce. It was like she knew she had no ground to stand on. She'd stop by when I wasn't home to pack up her things, leaving little notes behind asking if we could talk things through. I never responded. Then there was Sierra. She was the wild card in all this. I didn't expect to hear from her again, but a week after the barbecue, she called me. I just needed to hear from someone who understands, she said, her voice strong. I'm so angry, but I also feel like I can't stop crying. It's like my life isn't my own anymore. I get it, I told her. And I did. We talked for over an hour, swapping stories and piecing together timelines. It was surreal, bonding with the person whose life had been destroyed alongside mine. But it helped. Sierra wasn't wasting any time, though. She'd already filed for divorce and had moved back to her parents' house with the kids. I'm not sticking around to see if Travis can redeem himself, she said. He made his bed, and now he can rot in it. Hearing her resolve made me feel lighter in a way. If she could move forward, so could I. But it didn't stop with Harper and Travis. Our mutual friends started taking sides, which was somehow both expected and incredibly frustrating. Some people reached out to me, apologizing for Harper's behavior and offering their support. Others, though, clearly felt torn. She made a mistake, one mutual friend told me, as if 6 months of sneaking around was a mistake and not a calculated series of choices. Don't you think you should at least hear her out? No, I said flatly. I don't. That seemed to be the end of that friendship. Harper's reputation took a nosedive, too. She tried to spin the story in her favor, claiming I was distant and emotionally unavailable, but it didn't stick. People knew me well enough to see through the lies. Besides, the evidence was too damning to ignore. Texts, photos, hotel receipts. She didn't stand a chance. One of the neighbors even confronted me at the mailbox a couple of weeks later. James, I had no idea she was like that, he said, shaking his head. My wife's been telling me to stop hanging out with Travis at the gym. She says his kind of energy is contagious. I almost laughed. Smart woman, I replied. But consequences wasn't just social. It honestly touched my professional life too. At first, the stress threatened to creep in, but instead of letting it pull me under, I used it as fuel. My focus sharpened like never before. I poured my energy into my work, not to prove anything to Harper, but to prove to myself that I wasn't going to let her mess derail me. When my boss pulled me aside, it wasn't to call out slipping performance. It was to commend me for stepping up. I'd been gunning for a new opportunity anyway, so I started quietly putting out feelers, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. By the time interviews rolled in, I was already moving on to bigger and better things. While Harper was busy trying to spin her version of events, I was leveling up. A fresh start wasn't just an idea anymore. It was already in motion. Life slowly started to stabilize after that. The house felt emptier without Harper's stuff, but it also felt better, cleaner, like I could finally breathe without her lies suffocating me. I started focusing on myself. Sierra and I stayed in touch, mostly through texts and the occasional phone call. We didn't lean on each other too much. It was more like we were checking in, making sure the other person was still standing. She even sent me a photo of her kids playing in the backyard of her parents' house. They're going to be okay, she wrote. And so am I. I was happy for her. As for Harper, she faded into the background. I'd hear bits and pieces through mutual friends, how she was living in a tiny apartment across town, how she was trying to rebuild her life, whatever that meant. She reached out a couple more times, asking if we could talk, but I never replied. The last I heard, Travis had lost his job. Sierra told me he tried to get her to take him back, but she slammed that door shut. Good for her. By the time the divorce was finalized, I felt like a new person. Turns out divorce is not a so bad idea. The bitterness was still there, but it wasn't consuming me anymore. It was just a reminder. A scar to remind me to pay attention next time. One night, I sat out on the back porch, looking at the yard where everything had gone down. The string lights were still there, though I hadn't turned them on since the barbecue. It felt like a lifetime ago. I didn't feel triumphant or vindicated, just free. Free from the lies, the betrayal, and the weight of trying to fix something that was never going to be whole again. The fallout had been brutal, but in a strange way, it was exactly what I needed to start over. And yeah, that's my story. If you think I overreacted, I respect your opinion. but it only meant reclaiming my right of being cheated on like any respectable man would. The only difference is that I did it in my style.
Go ahead and file the divorce papers. I don't need the kids, he said, walking out the door, leaving me with our 3-year-old twins and our newborn daughter. I'd had my suspicions about his infidelity, but between parenting and work, I pushed them aside. I can't take this anymore. My twin daughters clung to me, their little faces full of worry. "Mommy, I love you," they said. In that moment, something inside me shifted. Despite my anger, I found clarity. "Fine, let's do it," I said, signing the divorce papers without a second thought. A bitter smile crept across my face. He has no idea what's coming. After all the support I've given him, he's the one who'll regret this. And so, unknowingly, he started his downfall. "I'll be late again tonight." How many times had I heard those words? I'm Maya, 34 years old. We married 4 years ago, and I spoiled him a bit, probably because he's 2 years younger. The next year, we had twin daughters, and 3 years later, our third daughter arrived. Around the time she was born, he began coming home late, constantly. He used to say, "I hope the third one's a boy. I want to play catch with him." He was excited during the pregnancy, but everything changed when he found out it was a girl. At the hospital, he frowned when he saw our newborn daughter. "She doesn't look like me. She's not cute." Anger surged through me. How could he say that about his own child? What kind of father says that? I think that's when I first considered divorce. Even after we came home, his mood didn't improve. As my maternity leave was ending, he barely helped with the kids. "Show some interest in them," I told him. "If you're overwhelmed, hire a babysitter." "You have savings," he replied. I had a solid job at a top company, earning more than most women my age. Meanwhile, he was constantly changing jobs, struggling to hold one down. Maybe he resented my success. At the time, he was doing temporary work, and I worried about how long that would last. Since I couldn't count on financial support, I at least hoped he would step up as a father. But when I asked him to spend time with the kids, he complained, "It's too much work." Even when he did help, it was half-hearted and the girls were bored. He noticed they didn't like him much, and it bothered him. This pattern continued until one day, he just stopped helping altogether. "I'm tired from work. I need my weekends to rest." He'd either shut himself in his room or go out with someone else. Today, I had to work, even though it was the weekend. "I'm stuck if you don't watch the kids. I have things to do. Bye." He refused to watch them. I couldn't leave them alone, so I often had to find a babysitter last minute. This was tearing our marriage apart and hurting the kids, so I decided to consult with his parents. Their response was disappointing. "A wife must endure. That's the key. And don't forget to take care of what I mentioned the other day." My parents live far away, so I rarely see them. I didn't feel comfortable calling them and didn't know who else to turn to. "Hey, make me some food." I came home one evening to find my husband in pajamas, the room a mess. The only bright spot was seeing my kids, bored with their toys, light up with big smiles when they saw me. "Where were you so late?" "I had some errands at your parents' house." "Now hurry up and make dinner. I'm starving." "If you've been home all day, couldn't you have done the laundry or cleaned the bathroom?" He smirked at my question. I've decided not to do anything for people who don't show proper gratitude. "What do you mean?" "I cleaned the bathroom yesterday, and you didn't even thank me." I'm sure I said thank you. "Not that kind of thank you. I'm talking about $200 as a thank you." He held out his hand, asking for money. I was too tired and frustrated to argue, so I called him to the bathroom to talk away from the kids. I do everything: work, house chores, and take care of the kids. Haven't you ever thanked me? It's a wife's duty. And what's your duty? I work too. Despite earning only $1,000 a month and doing nothing at home, he still had the audacity to demand more. We argued for an hour. "Mommy, I'm hungry." My daughter's voice pulled me back to reality. My husband stormed off, but I ignored him and hurried to make dinner. In the tense atmosphere, I uncovered his secret. My husband was having an affair. I confided in a colleague I've known since college. She had also divorced because of her husband's infidelity. "You should gather evidence right away," she advised, sharing tips on how to do it. I had suspected something for a while. Just before our youngest was born, I noticed a sweet scent on him that wasn't familiar. "Were you wearing perfume?" I asked casually. He started sweating and stammered. There were other signs: late nights, less conversation, his distance from the kids, and a lack of intimacy. But one incident confirmed it for me. "There was lip balm in your jacket pocket." "It's mine. My lips get chapped." "Are you using Channel's pink lip balm?" "Oh, well, maybe it's my mom's." His awkward excuse sounded like a lie. As he rushed to the bathroom, I saw it. "What's that?" It was a love bite in a spot usually covered by clothes. I almost confronted him, but decided I needed proof first. "Take your time in the bath," I said, pretending not to notice. The next day, I got home late from work and found my daughters already asleep. The house was quiet except for the light in the dining room, where my husband stood holding a piece of paper. "I've had enough. Let's get a divorce." "What? You want a divorce? And you don't want the kids?" He handed me the papers and walked out before I could respond. "Mommy," the twins woke up from the sound of the door, looking worried. "It's okay. Sorry for waking you," I reassured them, though things were far from okay. "He says he's had enough." That's my line. "And he doesn't want the kids." How could he? Tears flowed as emotions overwhelmed me, but I barely noticed. "Mommy, I love you," my daughter said, hugging me tightly. At that moment, I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't let my daughters carry this burden. If I only had them, I'd find happiness. I finally knew what I needed to do. "Fine. Let's file the papers." I said it with determination, and my daughters smiled. That night, we all slept peacefully. The next morning, I submitted the divorce papers and made a call. "Yes, go ahead. It's my husband who's going to be in trouble." The person on the other end listened and acted. I'd thought about this for a while. If my husband betrayed me, I'd make sure everything he'd done came crashing down, even if it meant his life would fall apart. No regrets. 3 days later, "Maya, where were you?" I came home from work to find my parents-in-law and husband waiting. My mother-in-law was angry, my father-in-law looked pale, and my husband seemed completely clueless. "Did you wait outside the door the entire time?" "That's unsettling." "This isn't the time for that." "What's going on?" She shoved a letter at me. "It's a notice from a lawyer. It's pretty clear if you read it." Her face flushed red and her voice grew louder. "I have to pick up the girls, so if you'll excuse me." I walked into the house, ignoring them. My furious in-laws followed me into the living room, insisting we talk. "Why did you send this out of the blue?" "We don't understand." "You'll get it when you read the letter." Using a lawyer is cowardly. Even though they were in the wrong, they quickly tried to flip the situation. Frustrated, I struggled to explain. Finally, my clueless husband chimed in. "Is this because you're unhappy with the divorce and filing a complaint?" My in-laws stared at him, shocked. Of course, he had no idea about everything I had done for them over the years. "We never heard about a divorce. Is that why this is happening?" Our son is completely useless. What's the rush? You've ruined everything. Hold on. What's going on? As their conversation went in circles, my mother-in-law slammed the table. Why did you divorce Maya? Ah, well, my husband stammered, caught off guard. So I stepped in. Because he completely neglected his responsibilities as a husband and father. You keep saying men are like that, right? Would you forgive your father-in-law for cheating then? What? Clearly, she wasn't expecting me to mention her son's infidelity. My husband tried to speak, but a sharp look from me stopped him. Suddenly, my father-in-law defended his son. A man's affair is just a game. It's not a big deal. Arguing is pointless. Please leave. Any further communication will go through my lawyer. Why involve a lawyer now? You'll agree to the divorce, right? My husband looked confused. I've not only agreed, but I've already filed the papers. What, then why? As my husband and I argued, my mother-in-law started crying. How can you expect me to pay $39,500 all at once? What's with that amount? Who's getting paid? Finally, the moment I'd been waiting for arrived. I revealed my secret with confidence. 4 years ago, just after we got married, my mother-in-law asked to talk. I need to discuss something. Nervous, I agreed to listen, thinking I'd do anything for my new mother-in-law. But her request shocked me. Can you lend me $40,000? I was completely blindsided. She even asked about my annual income without any hesitation, leaving me stunned. I couldn't handle the pressure and blurted out my earnings. Maybe over $165,000. Her eyes lit up. Apparently, my father-in-law had become addicted to horse racing, blowing through money and racking up debt. She begged me, desperate for $40,000 to repay the debt, and I couldn't refuse. I made it clear, you must pay me back, before lending her the money. 4 years went by, and she only paid back $2,600. Sometimes she'd return some money, only to borrow it again. Realizing I'd never see the full amount, I hired a lawyer to demand the remaining $39,500. My husband's shocked expression almost made me laugh. I promised to repay it gradually. Why demand it all at once? We're no longer family. I don't need to be considerate. That's when my mother-in-law let out a screech, furious at my husband. You caused this with your affair. You should pay it instead of me. Why me? We're retired. Our pension won't cover it. If you want to stay in my house, listen to me. Of course, she couldn't pay the $39,500. And my husband was unemployed at the time. I'm going to live with Laura, so I won't pay. Is that your mistress? Tired of this back and forth, I decided to end it. Don't think it stops at $39,500. I'm also demanding $113,000 from both you and your mistress as compensation. And don't forget child support. What? You can't do that. It's only fair. It's the price for neglecting your kids and fooling around. Where's the proof I cheated? Have you already forgotten you just admitted you're moving in with Laura? I sighed and handed him the stack of evidence I'd gathered. I felt sick just looking at these. The photos were from his social media, showing him kissing and hugging his mistress. My lawyer had seen them too, and they were undeniable. Why do you have these? I found your social media online. It's pathetic you thought no one would find it. My foolish husband had left his account open for the public, posting carefree photos. It was surprising that someone so clueless about technology would be so careless, but it made gathering evidence of his infidelity easy. My in-laws were stunned, staring at him with their mouths open. All right, it's time for you to leave. I need to pick up the kids. At least don't go after Laura for compensation. What if she leaves me? I don't care. Since the situation wasn't getting better, I kicked the three of them out. Open up, help me. I didn't know about the debt. I could hear my husband yelling through the door for a while. I'll call the police. At that, they finally left, dejected. A year has passed since then, and after paying me compensation, the mistress disappeared. Now my ex-husband, stuck living with his parents, was pressured to cover the $39,500, so he borrowed from a shady dealer. I got my money back quickly, but he's still on the hook for the $113,000 in compensation and $330 in monthly child support. He's earning his daily wage doing manual labor from morning till night. The interest on his debt is piling up, and he might never repay it in his lifetime. But that's not my concern. Mommy, hurry up, or we'll be late. Oops, my daughters are calling. Time to head to the daycare. They're growing up so fast. That alone brings me joy.
I'm an 18-year-old woman who recently received an amazing birthday gift from my paternal grandparents, an international trip to Isabella and a cheque to cover my expenses. They handed me an envelope with the flight tickets, and I was thrilled. However, the very next day, my parents started pressuring me to give the trip to my older sister, Ava. She's 21 and is considered the golden child in our family. My parents argued that Ava, being an architecture major, would benefit more from a trip to Isabella. They said it would help her understand architectural designs better. I tried to explain that I also had plans to major in literature, making the trip equally important for me. Besides, Ava had already turned down a similar offer on her 18th birthday, preferring the money instead. I pointed out that the airline probably wouldn't allow ticket transfers unless it was an emergency. My parents dismissed this, insisting that they just needed the ticket and would handle the rest. This argument dragged on for days, and after 2 weeks I eventually gave in. I didn't want to keep fighting and felt emotionally blackmailed as my parents reminded me of everything they had done for me, framing this as a small favour in return. Their persistence wore me down. At one point they even suggested that my trip would be a waste, which hurt a lot. They quickly tried to take it back, but the damage was done. They believed Ava's trip would be more meaningful because it would look good on her resume since she's graduating soon. They argued I had plenty of time to travel in the future, unlike Ava, who would start working soon. Reluctantly, I agreed to give up the ticket to avoid more drama. At least I still had the cheque. Sadly, I'm used to this kind of treatment, so I wasn't too surprised. I'm not even sure the airline would allow the ticket transfer based on their guidelines. I didn't think my parents could do much, but they figured out a way to bypass the rules. Yesterday, when I was supposed to leave for the airport, Ava took my boarding pass instead. We got a call from the cops saying Ava had been in an accident and needed to be bailed out. Apparently, she tried to take control of the steering wheel in the cab because she thought the driver was taking the wrong route. They lost control and crashed into a tree. Ava only had a few scratches, but the cab driver was seriously hurt with a broken arm and a deep cut on his forehead. He pressed charges against Ava for causing the accident, so now my parents have to use their life savings to bail her out and settle with the driver to avoid going to trial. When I heard this, I blurted out that it was karma for forcing me to give up my trip. I regretted it immediately, as my parents looked shocked and said I shouldn't joke about something so serious. They told me that once words are said, they can't be taken back, and called me selfish for saying such a thing. This made me even more upset because they had been hypocritical, saying that they didn't want my trip to go to waste. Feeling angry and impulsive, I decided to take action. I packed a small bag and got a cab to follow my parents to the hospital. I realized that no matter what I did, my family would never value or appreciate me, so I might as well live my life the way I want. At the hospital, my parents and I arrived almost at the same time. Ava was talking to the cops, trying to explain the accident wasn't her fault, though it clearly was. I wasn't there to talk to her. I went up to her, asked for the boarding pass, and when she looked confused, I grabbed her purse and found it myself. I made a run for it back to the cab, leaving everyone confused. I headed to the airport and, thankfully, made it just in time. I boarded my flight and was off to Isabella. I didn't check my phone for calls or messages until I landed, and only a couple of hours ago did I find out how angry my family is at me. My parents think I was insensitive because Ava had just been in a terrible accident, even though she caused it herself. They seem to gloss over that fact and focus on how I only cared about my trip. Ava is mad because she thinks I stole this opportunity from her, even though she stole it from me first. If anything, I was just reclaiming what was mine. The general consensus is that I need to apologize, but I'm not sure if I should. Ava also messaged me saying our parents would have to use their savings to settle with the cab driver. I know our financial situation isn't great, so instead of enjoying Isabella, I could have saved the money and given my parents the check I got for my birthday. But I chose to be selfish. So, am I the arsehole for taking off to Isabella after my sister's accident? Edit. Hi, I'll answer some of your questions to clarify the situation. First, about the boarding pass. I'm pretty sure my parents or Ava didn't figure out a way to bypass the ticket transfer rules. I think her plan was to get to the airport and wing it. If they had managed something, I wouldn't have been able to board with my passport, as they would have required Ava's. So they didn't have a plan, which worked out for me. Why do I continue to live with my family despite their treatment? This is the kind of treatment I've been used to since I was a child. It's not okay, but my parents' preference for Ava made me feel like I needed to do better to win them over, not that they should treat me better. It was a strange, self-sacrificial way of thinking. I spent 18 years trying to be the best daughter so they'd finally like me, leading to disappointment and frustration. I never wanted to give up, thinking that they'd eventually come around because they were my parents, but that's how a child's mind works. My grandparents live far from the city, away from everything I've ever known. I didn't want to change my lifestyle, even though I often thought I'd be better off living with them. They don't know how my parents treat me, nor does anyone else in the family, because we're good at hiding it. That's why I never considered leaving, but I think I will now. I'm an adult, and I don't need to please anybody anymore. As for my relationship with Ava, we've never been particularly close. I don't hate her, and she doesn't have anything against me. We just don't get along. Regarding my family's financial condition, we're not rich. We're on the lower end of the spectrum since my mum is a stay-at-home mum and my dad is a high school football coach. They often rely on my grandparents for money, and I'm not sure how they plan to handle this situation. If they want more financial help, they'll have to come clean about what they did. That's just how it is with my family. Many of you asked why Ava was in the passenger seat of the cab. Honestly, I don't have a clear answer. It's probably just a habit. She's always chosen that seat during family road trips. It seems like her spot. Ava's a bit of a control freak. She once grabbed the steering wheel from a cab driver because she thought he would drive us into traffic. That ended up causing an accident, so you can see how much she needs to be in control. She even left for the airport almost 5 hours before the flight. I've decided to relax and enjoy my trip. It's unlikely I'll get another chance like this for a few years after I start college. I shouldn't worry about my parents. They're adults and can handle things themselves. It's not my fault they made a bad decision and got hit by karma. It was naive to expect them to appreciate my sacrifice, and I won't let that ruin my fun. I'm having an amazing time in Isabella. I talked to my grandparents this morning and shared everything I've been through at home. It felt good to finally talk about the mistreatment I faced and how my parents favoured my sister. My grandparents were shocked that I hadn't mentioned it before. They were supportive and told me I'd done the right thing. They insisted that when I get back, I should come straight to them. They're arranging for me to move in with them and will cover all my college expenses. I don't have to worry about housing or tuition, which is a huge relief. So, after a single conversation with my grandparents, everything is looking up. My parents had already made it clear they wouldn't pay for my tuition, unlike with Ava. Now, I don't have to deal with that stress. I'm excited to head home in a week, but now I'll be living a much better life. Update. My trip ended a few days ago, and I'm now living with my grandparents. When I returned, my grandparents had the guest room ready and had already moved my things from my parents' house. They welcomed me warmly and told me that they'd confronted my parents after our conversation. My parents had called them the evening of Ava's accident to discuss what to do. They didn't want to use their savings for the settlement or risk going to trial, especially since there was dash-cam footage showing Ava caused the accident. The cab driver was demanding a high amount, so my grandparents were needed for help. When my grandparents met with my parents, they first asked about my situation, questioning whether it was true that my parents had mistreated me and even asked me to give up my trip for Ava. My parents initially tried to avoid the topic, insisting that they were only there to discuss Ava's trouble. But my grandparents insisted on addressing my situation, which eventually led to my parents snapping and admitting the truth. They claimed that my behaviour showed I deserved their treatment, saying I only came to the hospital to grab my flight ticket and that I had always been jealous of Ava. They denied ever treating me unfairly, which was a blatant lie. My parents labelled me as entitled and spoiled, and said they wouldn't deal with it when I returned. This was all my grandparents needed to hear to decide to cut ties with my parents. An argument ensued, and my parents told them they were free to leave and that they no longer needed their help. They even said they didn't want me back, making it clear that if my grandparents wanted to take me in, they were welcome to. So my grandparents arranged for everything in my room to be packed up and moved to their house, making sure I could settle in comfortably. After hearing all this, I ended up crying. I'd always known my parents didn't care about me, but they were all I'd known for 18 years. Hearing the truth broke my heart. I hope no one else has to go through something like this. I'm really grateful my grandparents have been there for me. Now, I'm settled with them, and this is my new home. I'll start college in a couple of months, but until then, my grandparents have promised to support me. Even after college, they'll cover all my expenses. I haven't had any contact with my parents or Ava since I returned. I avoided their messages while trying to enjoy my trip. Today, I finally checked them, thinking I was in a better place mentally. I'm glad I didn't check earlier because it would have been another emotional blow. Ava's messages were the same old accusations: selfish, entitled, spoiled. She's glad to be rid of me, claiming I don't deserve her company. I think she's got it twisted. She's the one who doesn't deserve mine. But honestly, it's my parents who hurt me the most. Their messages were no surprise. They called me heartless and said they failed to raise me right. They even blamed me for leaving the hospital to go on my trip. I didn't respond to that. They sent another long message, upset that I complained to my grandparents about how I was treated. They claimed they gave me a comfortable life, and I had no right to complain. They said I was just jealous of Ava and called me a waste of their time and energy. That really hit me hard, and I almost cried. But after talking to my grandparents, I promised myself I wouldn't let their harsh words get to me, so I didn't cry, but I did block them to cut off all access. I'm starting my healing journey and trying to move on. I need to erase all traces of them from my mind if I want to live my best life. I'm not sure if it's possible, but I'm going to try. Update. The funniest and craziest thing happened today. It's been nearly 2 weeks since I got back, and I haven't kept up with what's been going on with my parents and Ava. I assume they're still struggling with the settlement. This afternoon, my parents showed up at my grandparents' house, clearly in a vengeful mood. When my parents arrived, they didn't acknowledge me at all. They walked past me and went straight to the living room to sit with my grandparents. I stood there, unsure of what to do, but my grandparents invited me to join them. They knew my parents wouldn't be happy about this, and I could see it on their faces. But if they were upset, they didn't say anything. Once we were all seated, my grandparents asked why they were there. My parents had previously made it clear they wanted nothing to do with my grandparents because of their support for me. They said they would stick to that, but had some issues to settle first. They presented a document with calculations claiming that they'd spent a huge amount raising me. They expected my grandparents to reimburse them for this amount, as they were now responsible for me. I was stunned by the ridiculous demand for almost $120,000 and had no words for how low this was. It felt like they were trying to make us feel small. My grandparents asked for a moment alone and left to discuss it privately. There was an awkward silence with just me and my parents in the room. They refused to acknowledge me, which was uncomfortable. When my grandparents returned, my grandpa remained calm and polite. He agreed that they would repay the amount my parents claimed, but only if my parents repaid all the money they had borrowed from my grandparents over the years. My parents were taken aback and looked like deer caught in headlights. I had to leave the room to avoid laughing at them. I stayed upstairs until they left. When I came down, my grandparents told me that my parents tried to argue but eventually resorted to cursing us out before leaving. I doubt they'll be back any time soon after this humiliation. Even if they do come back, my grandparents have shown they can handle them. With me heading to college in a couple of months, I'm looking forward to that. Going to Isabella was definitely the best decision I could have made.
This story is titled, I Paid for Girlfriend College Tuition for Years, only to find out that she was cheating with her ex and they were mocking me. So I made sure they never forget this for the rest of their life. My ultimate revenge. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hi Reddit, I'm Daniel, 38 male. For 5 years, I was in a relationship with Mia, 28 female. On the outside, we looked like the perfect couple. We talked about marriage, kids, and building a future together. But sometimes life kicks you in the face when you least expect it. 2 years ago, Mia left her steady office job to pursue her dream of becoming a medical professional. I supported her 100%. I covered all the rent, bills, groceries, and even helped pay her tuition when her savings ran out. I didn't complain because I loved her, and that's what you do for the people you care about, right? I kept telling myself that every time I worked extra hours or skipped treating myself so she could chase her dream. I felt good being the one providing for her, but over time, that weight became harder to carry. Supporting Mia was more than just financial. I became her cheerleader, her emotional rock, and the person she vented to when classes got tough. At first, it felt rewarding. I'd listen to her stress about exams or demanding professors, always assuring her that she was capable and brilliant. I'd surprise her with little things to make her life easier, a meal ready when she came home, a care package during exam weeks, and once, even a handwritten note hidden in her backpack wishing her luck. But somewhere along the way, things started shifting. The gratitude I initially felt from her turned into expectation. The small smiles and thank yous I loved getting from her disappeared, replaced by an air of entitlement. The changes in her behavior started slow. Late nights at school turned into library sessions, and then mysterious texts from classmates appeared. I brushed it off, telling myself I was overthinking. But then came the cryptic Instagram stories. Selfies, campus snaps, and quotes like, "Sometimes you have to lose yourself to find yourself." Who even says that? She had never been this active on social media before. Something felt off, but I chose to ignore it. Love makes you blind and, apparently, stupid. The social media activity wasn't just unusual, it was unsettling. Mia had always been someone who valued her privacy. Suddenly, she'd post pictures of herself out with people I didn't recognize, captioned with things like "new beginnings" or "chasing my dreams." It was subtle, but it felt like she was crafting an image of herself that didn't include me. I'd bring it up casually, asking who she was with or why she felt the need to share so much online, and her responses were dismissive. "Just classmates," she'd say, or "it's just fun." When I'd ask about her day, her answers were always vague. I'd see her texting at night, and she'd shrug it off, saying it was just study group stuff. But deep down, I knew. Those late-night study sessions were feeling more like excuses than explanations. I wanted proof before jumping to conclusions, so I stayed quiet. It wasn't just her words that felt off. It was her actions. Mia used to light up when we spent time together. Movie nights, cooking dinner as a team, or just sitting on the couch talking about our day. Those moments had been the foundation of our relationship. But now she was distant. She'd sit with her phone glued to her hand, laughing at messages I couldn't see. Our conversations felt forced, like she was going through the motions. One night, I caught her giggling while texting in bed. I asked her what was so funny, and she said it was just a meme from a classmate. When I asked to see it, she hesitated before showing me something that felt too generic to be the source of her amusement. It wasn't much, but it planted a seed of doubt. I started noticing patterns. Her phone was always on silent, flipped face down when we were together. She'd disappear into the bathroom for longer than usual, phone in hand. And then there were the late nights. She'd tell me she had to stay at the library or meet with her group for a project, but her explanations started to sound rehearsed. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust that the person I'd built a life with wouldn't betray me. But the gut feeling that something was wrong grew stronger every day. Still, I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was imagining things because I didn't want to face the possibility that the woman I loved was lying to me. The breaking point came one evening when I overheard her on the phone. I was in the kitchen, and she was in the living room, speaking in hushed tones. "Yeah, I'll see you later," she said, her voice soft and almost flirtatious. When I walked into the room, she jumped, quickly ending the call. "Just a classmate," she explained, her cheeks flushed. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was crazy. Was I imagining her pulling away? Was I reading too much into her secrecy? Or was there something she wasn't telling me? I decided I needed proof. I wasn't going to accuse her without knowing the truth. If she was hiding something, I'd find out. And if she wasn't, then I'd confront the insecurities eating away at me. Either way, I needed clarity. Last week, everything fell apart. It started like any other Wednesday morning. I was running late for work and couldn't find my phone. Frustrated, I asked Mia if I could use hers to call it. She handed me her phone without hesitation, which threw me off. I was expecting a moment of panic, maybe some excuse about why she couldn't let me use it. But no, she handed it over, completely calm. For a moment, I thought I was overreacting. As I unlocked her phone, her Instagram messages were still open on the screen. My heart stopped when I saw the top message. "I can't stop thinking about last night. You make me feel things I've never felt before." My chest tightened. I told myself it was a misunderstanding, but curiosity got the better of me. I scrolled up. Each message I read was like another punch to the gut. It wasn't just flirting. It was explicit. They talked about how much they missed each other, how they couldn't wait to meet again. One message was from just a few nights ago. "You looked so beautiful under the moonlight." The pit in my stomach grew deeper. This wasn't just some harmless texting. This was a full-blown affair. And also in one of the messages, they were mocking me. And then I saw his name. Alex. Her ex. The one guy she'd always said was a mistake, someone she had no intention of ever speaking to again. I felt like a fool. For years, I had supported her, trusted her, and given her everything I could, and here she was, throwing it all away for some guy who couldn't hold a candle to me. The final blow came when I saw a picture she sent him. It was a selfie she'd taken in our bedroom, wearing the pajamas I had bought her. The caption read, "Something to think about tonight." My head was spinning. Every overtime shift I'd worked, every sacrifice I'd made to support her dreams, felt meaningless in that moment. I handed her phone back without a word. She smiled at me, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. "Thanks," she said casually. I nodded and left for work, my mind racing. At work, I couldn't focus. I replayed the messages in my head over and over. I wanted to confront her immediately, but I knew I needed to calm down. Confronting her in anger wouldn't solve anything. I needed to think this through. By the time my shift ended, I had a plan. When I got home that evening, Mia was in the kitchen cooking dinner. She greeted me with a kiss and asked how my day was. I forced a smile and mumbled something about being tired. She didn't suspect a thing. I sat at the table, watching her move around the kitchen, laughing at her own jokes and humming to herself. It made me sick. How could she act so normal when she was sneaking around behind my back? That night, as she slept beside me, I made a decision. This wasn't going to be a simple breakup. Mia had taken advantage of my love and trust. She needed to face the consequences of her actions, and I was going to make sure she did. I started replaying every suspicious moment over the past few months. The late nights, the dodgy explanations, the secrecy around her phone. It all made sense now. I wanted to rage, to throw her out of my apartment that instant, but I knew that would be too easy. She had betrayed me, disrespected everything I'd done for her, and I wasn't about to let her walk away without facing the fallout. This wasn't just about ending things, it was about reclaiming my dignity. I spent the rest of the night awake, formulating my next move. By morning, I knew exactly what I had to do. The next day, while Mia was out at school, I began packing her things. Every piece of clothing, every book, every little item that belonged to her. It all went into boxes. I wasn't reckless about it. I wanted to make sure she couldn't accuse me of breaking or throwing away her things. By the time I was done, her presence in the apartment had been reduced to a neat stack of boxes by the door. Next, I called a locksmith. I explained the situation, and though the guy on the phone seemed hesitant at first, he agreed to come out the following morning. The locks were going to be changed, and Mia wasn't getting back in without my permission. It felt symbolic, taking control of my space and shutting her out of it entirely. But changing the locks wasn't enough. I needed her to understand the depth of her betrayal. She'd taken my trust, my support, and my love for granted. Over the next few hours, I began going through our shared finances. Rent, groceries, tuition payments. I tallied it all up. The total was staggering. Seeing it laid out in black and white fueled my anger even more. She'd leeched off me for years while sneaking around behind my back. I also took the time to compile evidence. Screenshots of her messages with Alex, photos she'd sent him, and even the timestamps on her so-called study sessions. I saved everything onto a flash drive and backed it up on my laptop. If Mia tried to play the victim or twist the story, I was going to be ready. That evening, Mia came home, completely unaware of what was waiting for her. She walked through the door with her usual cheery smile, greeted me with a kiss, and started talking about her day. I could barely look at her. Every word out of her mouth felt like another lie. Finally, I interrupted her. "We need to talk," I said, my voice cold and steady. Her smile faltered. "What's wrong?" she asked, trying to sound concerned. I gestured toward the boxes by the door. "Your stuff is packed. You're not staying here anymore." Mia's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" she stammered. I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots of her messages with Alex. "This," I said, holding the screen up for her to see. "And this, and this." I flipped through the images, each one more damning than the last. Her face went pale. "I can explain," she whispered. I laughed bitterly. "Oh, I'd love to hear it. Explain how you were sneaking around with your ex while I was working overtime to support your dreams. Explain how you sent him pictures from our bedroom. Go ahead, Mia, I'm listening." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For once, she had nothing to say. "That's what I thought," I said. "You need to leave. The locks are being changed tomorrow. Don't come back." Mia tried to argue, to beg, to cry, but I didn't budge. She'd made her choices, and now she had to face the consequences. By the time she left that night, carrying her boxes out to her car, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. This was just the beginning of her fallout. The first step was social media. Mia had built this facade of being a hardworking, ambitious woman, chasing her dreams. Her posts were curated to make her look inspiring, full of those corny motivational quotes and pictures of her studying with a latte in hand. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, she was sneaking around with her ex and mooching off the man funding her entire life. I wasn't about to let her keep that shiny image. I posted a straightforward message to my account. People show you their true colors when you least expect it. Imagine supporting someone's dreams only to find out they're meeting their ex behind your back, using your home and your money. Let's not sugarcoat betrayal. I didn't tag Mia directly, but anyone who knew us, our friends, mutual acquaintances, her classmates, would connect the dots. I attached screenshots of her conversations with Alex, the photos she'd sent him, and even a shot of the receipt for her tuition payment. The reaction was immediate. Comments started flooding in, people DMing me to ask what happened or expressing their shock. Some people tried to defend her, but the evidence was too damning. And then came the best part. Mia herself commented, "I can't believe you're airing our personal life like this. This is childish and pathetic." I fired back with, "What's pathetic is sneaking around with your ex while pretending to be a victim. What's childish is using someone's money and trust while planning your next betrayal. Own up to your actions." The silence after that was deafening. Mutual friends who had always kissed up to Mia suddenly started unfollowing her. I heard through the grapevine that Jessica, a girl in her class who had always been competitive with Mia, screenshotted the post and shared it with their professors. Academic reputations are fragile, and Mia's was starting to crack. Meanwhile, I wasn't done with Alex either. The guy thought he could waltz back into Mia's life and undermine everything I had built? Wrong. I started digging into his history. It didn't take long to find a pattern. Unpaid debts, a string of failed relationships, and stories from mutual acquaintances about how he mooched off anyone who let him. Using a burner account, I sent anonymous messages to people in his social circles, attaching proof of his lies and debts. It wasn't long before Alex's reputation was as trashed as Mia's. He lost his job shortly after. Something about showing up drunk one too many times. Perfect. Once Mia was out of my apartment, I thought that would be the end of it. But I underestimated her sense of entitlement and sheer stupidity. Mia wasn't content to just lick her wounds and move on. She wanted to paint herself as the victim and make me look like the bad guy. Unfortunately for her, I was always a few steps ahead, and karma was just getting started. Mia's first move was to run to our mutual friends. She spun this sob story about how I blew things out of proportion and humiliated her. She claimed the messages with Alex were harmless, just old friends catching up, and that I had overreacted because I was insecure. For a minute, it seemed like some of our more gullible friends were buying into it. But then I dropped the screenshots. The ones with the timestamps, the explicit messages, and the selfies she'd sent him from our bedroom. That shut down the pity train real fast. "Are you seriously still defending her?" I texted one friend who tried to stay neutral. "Look at the evidence. She was cheating on me while I was paying her bills and supporting her dreams. You think that's okay?" That was the last time I heard from that particular friend. Others, thankfully, sided with me outright. They knew how much I had sacrificed for Mia and how much she had taken advantage of me. Slowly but surely, the truth spread, and Mia's reputation started to crumble. Meanwhile, Mia's actions were having ripple effects beyond just our social circle. Remember Jessica, the competitive classmate who was always gunning for Mia's spot as the teacher's pet? Well, Jessica got wind of what had happened, and she wasn't about to let an opportunity like this slip by. She started sharing the story, discreetly at first, but then more openly, among their peers and professors. Suddenly, Mia's academic integrity was being questioned. People started wondering if her success was earned or if she had been manipulating others, just like she had manipulated me. Her classmates began to avoid her, and group project invitations dried up. The professors didn't outright accuse her of anything, but the subtle shift in their attitudes was obvious. Mia, who once thrived on being the star pupil, found herself increasingly isolated. And then there was her family. I didn't have to do much to get them involved. They found out on their own. A mutual friend, likely someone tired of Mia's endless whining, mentioned the situation to her parents. Mia's dad was furious. From what I heard, he confronted her at home, demanding to know if the rumors were true. When she tried to downplay it, he pulled up the screenshots himself. "You've embarrassed yourself and this family," he reportedly told her. "Daniel worked his ass off for you, and this is how you repay him?" Her mom, who had always babied Mia, tried to defend her, but even she couldn't argue with the evidence. They gave her an ultimatum: shape up or find somewhere else to live. Mia, being the stubborn fool she was, decided to leave. She thought she could rely on Alex to pick up the pieces, but she was in for a rude awakening. Turns out Alex wasn't the knight in shining armor she thought he was. After losing his job, thanks to some misunderstandings with his employer that may or may not have involved a burner account and a well-timed tip from me, he was in no position to support anyone. The two of them ended up couch surfing at first, but even that didn't last long. Their friends got tired of the drama and the freeloading, and before long, Mia and Alex found themselves homeless. One evening, I was filling up my car at a gas station when I saw them. They were sitting in a beat-up car parked near the back of the lot, looking absolutely miserable. Mia was scrolling through her phone with a look of frustration, while Alex sat with his head in his hands. They didn't see me at first, but I made sure they did. I strolled past their car on my way to the store, making eye contact with Mia through the window. Her face turned bright red, and she quickly looked away. Alex didn't even lift his head. I didn't say anything, just smirked and kept walking. The sight of them sitting there, broken and defeated, was more satisfying than any words could ever be. After that, I heard bits and pieces about their downfall through mutual acquaintances. Mia was working odd jobs, barely scraping by. Alex had tried to get another job, but his reputation and his drinking problem kept catching up with him. The two of them were constantly fighting, blaming each other for their situation. "She's a nightmare," one of their former friends told me. "All she does is complain about how hard her life is now, like she didn't bring this on herself. Good. Let her stew in the mess she made." Meanwhile, my life was looking up. I'd started going out more, reconnecting with old friends, and focusing on myself. Work was going great, and I even started dating again. It felt good to be free of Mia's toxicity and to reclaim my time and energy for things and people that actually mattered. One day, I got a call from Mia's younger brother, Eric. He'd always been cool with me, and we'd stayed in touch even after everything went down. "Hey man," he said. "Just wanted to let you know, my parents are still pissed at Mia. She's been trying to get back in their good graces, but Dad's not having it. He said she burned too many bridges." I couldn't help but laugh. "Well, maybe she'll finally learn some accountability." Eric chuckled. "Yeah, maybe. Just thought you'd like to know karma's still doing its thing." While I was thriving, Mia and Alex were sinking deeper into their mess. The last I heard, they had been kicked out of the car they were staying in after Alex got into an argument with the owner. Word got around that Alex had finally bailed on Mia, leaving her with no money and nowhere to go. She ended up crashing with a distant relative, someone who didn't know the full extent of her drama. It wasn't long before that arrangement fell apart too. Mia's entitled behavior and constant complaints were too much for anyone to handle. The final blow came when Jessica, her former classmate, shared an anonymous tip with one of their professors about Mia's unethical behavior during group projects. It led to a formal investigation, and while nothing could be definitively proven, the stigma stuck. Mia's dreams of becoming a medical professional were effectively over. No one wanted to work with someone whose reputation was tainted by lies and manipulation. Meanwhile, my relationship with my new girlfriend Emma is growing. She became a constant source of joy and support, and together, we're building a life that's free of drama and toxicity. We have trips planned, new hobbies to explore, and goals to reach together. Being with her reminds me of what a healthy relationship is supposed to feel like. Mia and Alex were nothing more than a distant memory now, a cautionary tale about what happens when you take advantage of the wrong person. As for me, I was finally living the life I deserved, one filled with love, respect, and endless possibilities. And for that, I couldn't have been more grateful. Update. Hi Reddit, it's me again. Just when I thought Mia was finally out of my life for good, she found a way to claw her way back. It had been months since I'd seen or heard from her directly, but I still heard about her downward spiral through mutual acquaintances. Every update only reinforced what I already knew. I dodged a bullet. So, imagine my surprise when one evening, just as I was settling in for a relaxing night, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and when I opened the door, there she was, Mia. She looked nothing like the woman I'd once been with. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes wrinkled, and there were dark circles under her eyes. It was obvious she hadn't been doing well, but I wasn't about to feel sorry for her. "What do you want, Mia?" I said, leaning against the doorframe, making no effort to invite her in. Her lip quivered as she tried to force tears that weren't quite there. "Daniel, I need to talk to you. It's important." I folded my arms. "I don't think we have anything to talk about." "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "Just 5 minutes. I swear." I should have slammed the door in her face, but curiosity got me. I stepped aside reluctantly, gesturing for her to come in. She walked in cautiously, like she knew she didn't belong there anymore, and sat on the edge of the couch, fidgeting with her hands. "What's this about?" I asked, keeping my tone cold. She hesitated, her eyes darting around the room. I don't know how to say this, but I'm pregnant." I stared at her, expressionless. "And why are you telling me this?" Her eyes widened, as if the answer should have been obvious. "Because it's yours, Daniel. We're the father." I couldn't help but laugh, a deep, humorless sound that echoed through the room. "You really expect me to believe that? After everything you did? After Alex and God knows who else?" Her face flushed. "It's not Alex's, I swear. It's yours. I haven't been with anyone else since before we broke up." I raised an eyebrow. "You expect me to take your word for it? The same word that wasn't worth anything when you were sneaking around behind my back?" Tears started streaming down her face now, and this time they seemed real. "Daniel, I know I messed up. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But this isn't about me. It's about the baby. Our baby." I shook my head, my patience wearing thin. You've got some nerve coming here, Mia. You think you can waltz back into my life and drop this bomb, expecting me to just take responsibility without proof? That's not how this works. I'll do a paternity test, she said quickly. I'll prove it to you. Please, Daniel, just don't shut me out. I don't have anyone else. And there it was. The real reason she was here. She wasn't looking for me because she wanted to make amends, or because she cared about the truth. She was here because she had burned every other bridge and had no one left to turn to. She needed a lifeline, and I was her last resort. I leaned forward, making sure my voice was calm but firm. Let me make something clear, Mia. If, and that's a big if, that child is mine, I'll do what's legally required to support them. But that's it. You and I, we're done. Don't think for a second that this changes anything between us. Her shoulders sagged, and for a moment, she looked like she might argue. But then she nodded. Okay, she whispered. I understand. Good, I said, standing up and opening the door. Now leave. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but she thought better of it and walked out without another word. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I made arrangements for a paternity test, insisting that everything go through official channels. I wasn't about to let Mia manipulate the situation or take advantage of me again. She complied, probably because she had no other choice. When the results came back, they confirmed what I'd suspected all along. I wasn't the father. I sat in my car outside the testing facility, staring at the paper in my hands, a mix of relief and anger washing over me. She had lied. Again. Whether she genuinely believed I was the father or was just grasping at straws to reel me back in didn't matter. The result was the same. She had tried to use me, and it had backfired spectacularly. I wasted no time confronting her. I called her and told her to meet me at a nearby park, a public place where she couldn't make a scene. When she arrived, I didn't mince words. It's not mine, I said, holding up the test results. Her face went pale. That's not possible, she stammered. There must be a mistake. There's no mistake, I said, my voice icy. You lied to me, Mia. Again. And this time, you thought you could trap me with a fake pregnancy story. What the hell is wrong with you? I wasn't lying, she cried, tears streaming down her face. I thought it was yours. Swear. Save it, I snapped. I don't care what you thought. The fact is, you dragged me into your mess for no reason. Do you have any idea how disgusting that is? She sobbed, her entire body shaking, but I didn't feel a shred of sympathy. This wasn't about her feelings. This was about her blatant disrespect for me and my life. This is the last time you mess with me, Mia, I said, stepping closer to her. I don't want to see you, hear from you, or even hear your name ever again. You're done. Do you understand me? She nodded, her sobs choking her words, but I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in the middle of the park, a broken shell of the woman who had once thought she could control me. That was the last time I saw Mia. True to her word, or maybe out of sheer fear, she never tried to contact me again. Every now and then, I'd hear bits and pieces about her through mutual friends, but it was always the same story. She was still struggling, still blaming everyone else for her problems, and still incapable of taking responsibility for her actions. As for me, life continued to improve. My relationship with Emma grew stronger, my career flourished, and I finally felt at peace knowing I had taken back control of my life. Mia's desperate attempt to manipulate me with the pregnancy had only reinforced what I already knew. I was better off without her, and nothing she could ever do would change that. Sorry if I made this so long, Reddit. I just wanted to show you how far Mia's audacity can go. She wanted to exploit me until the very end. Thank God I'm not the father. I can't imagine my future kid having an awful mother like her.